Okay. Hello everyone, my name is Sheridan, and I'm going to be speaking on behalf of Canada in regards to the Keystone XL pipeline and the implications that it has on the environment. So first off, just a brief overview of what the Keystone XL pipeline is. Essentially, it's a crude oil carrying pipeline that was proposed by a Canadian energy infrastructure company known as TransCanada Corporation back in 2008. And to this day, this project that they've embarked on is still met with uncertainty and controversy due to a supposed humanitarian impact, as well as political indifference and a lack of environmental sustainability. The KXL, or Keystone XL pipeline, is basically designed to transfer crude oil, or crude bitumen, I should say, from the Alberta oil sands down to refineries located in southern states within the United States of America. The projected outcome of the KXL is to transfer roughly 830 million barrels of crude oil a day from the relatively landlocked estimated amount of 168 billion barrels, which are currently located under the boreal forest and the wetlands in Alberta. And this, being able to do this, would basically be a major stepping stone in solidifying North American oil sovereignty. This being stated, the construction and operation of such a pipeline does have immediate short-term environmental and political implications associated with it. However, though, the long-term effects of such a project heavily outweigh these. This is due to the substantial creation of jobs that it'll make, the increases of tax and GDP revenues for both Canada and the USA, as well as the movement to a more reliable, environmentally friendly source of transportation long-term, as well as the increase in national security due to reliable and efficient oil production within North America. Okay, so now that we have a general idea of the Keystone XL pipeline and the operations that are going to pertain within it, let's start looking at some of the counter arguments that have been presented regarding it. So the majority of opposing positions toward the KXL are positioned around the source of the crude oil and the process of extracting it from the oil sands, the initial environmental impact of constructing such a massive pipeline, the long-term impact associated with climate change, as well as the potential to displace current residents along the projected route. Now, this all being stated, I think it's pretty evident that the processes of extracting this crude oil from the natural environment is pretty tough. It's pretty environmentally unfriendly. This being said, though, with innovation, government dedication, as well as intervention, this impact has been substantially reduced in recent times, and it's currently on a trajectory to continue to reduce. So, for instance, the per barrel greenhouse gas emissions produced from extraction have seen a 30% reduction since the 1990s. The government of Alberta has introduced laws that mandate that all oil extraction companies must remediate and reclaim 100% of the land that they use. And on top of this, roughly 80% of the water that's used in the extraction and processing is now totally recycled and reused, thus creating less impact on the environment around where the processes are being taken place. Another counter-argument is based around the environmental impact of building such an expansive pipeline and the implications that it has on current landowners and communities. With taking this into consideration, TransCanada would not simply leave this land void of potential natural habitability or the landowners without substantial compensation. Similar to the regulations surrounding extraction in Alberta, the final stage of construction of the KXL would include cleaning of the land and area and total reclamation for the natural ecosystems. Through property easements and taxes, not only will the actual landowners benefit financially, but their communities will as well from partnering with TransCanada in the KXL. It's reported that in the first year of operation of the new expansion, it will contribute roughly $64 million US dollars in property tax revenue. And the current portions that are operating of the Keystone pipeline have already contributed over $500 million US dollars in property tax revenues, which directly reduce the tax burdens of homeowners and communities alike along the pathway of the route, and it just benefits the nation as a whole. Now let's look at the situation from Canada's perspective. So the implementation of such a project would directly transfer into creation of new employment for those involved with its construction and maintenance, as well as an influx of tax revenues and GDP growth for both Canada as well as the United States. Although estimates vary on the exact amount of jobs that KXL will create, it's generally accepted that the averages will vary between 5,000 and 20,000 from professional advisors and advocates. In terms of national economic growth, the KXL would also boost the Canadian economy by $2.4 billion during the construction of the new extension, and would boost the American economy by $3.4 billion throughout the duration of its lifetime. The Keystone Pipeline financial data also shows dramatic increases in annual revenues, ranging from 48 million Canadian dollars in 2010, growing to a substantial 504 million Canadian dollars in 2008. Which, if you do the math, that's a 950% increase over just 8 years. With the potential of shipping upwards to 830,000 million barrels of crude oil a day, it is imperative to be able to perform such a task in the most reliable and sustainable fashion possible, especially in recent times of such uncertainties due to the COVID-19 pandemic, where traditional routes of transportation across borders is now limited. The use of a pipeline bypasses these transportation issues because the system itself is actually a source of delivery. Pipelines, once active, are also substantially more environmentally sustainable compared to other means of transportation. For example, transportation by transport trucks uses on average 5,188 trillion BTUs of energy consumption yearly, and by seafaring freighters, the BTU consumption is roughly around 1,455 trillion BTUs. Whereas whereas compared to shipping through pipelines, they only require roughly 842 billion BTUs yearly. So that's a substantial decrease. The investment into oil infrastructure is also a matter of national security and North American sovereignty in terms of access to oil products. In 2008, Canada was able to provide 19% of America's total oil demand and is projected to increase to at least 35% by 2035. On the other side, the USA currently accounts for roughly 95% of Canada's total oil and gas exports, and the creation of the KXL extension would basically only help strengthen and retain this relationship between our nations. Supporting the KXL also means supporting the Canadian economy, taking into consideration that the energy sector contributes more than 10% of our nation's total nominal GDP, and currently employs over 282,000 people directly and over 550,000 people indirectly. So when you take these factors into consideration, it becomes very evident that supporting the KXL does not only mean supporting our own economy, but also actually means supporting our national security as well in the long run. Now, moving into the conclusion, after assessing and disputing the most common counter-arguments pertaining to the KXL extension, it is evident that it is in our nation's best interest to pursue this endeavor. Research and tangible evidence has shown that the KXL extension will not only provide thousands of jobs for Canadian citizens and boost our overall GDP, but it has proven to be the most environmentally sustainable mode of transportation for our crude oil, and it's going to contribute to our national security and oil sovereignty in the form of solidifying and defending our place in the oil production and export global community. Moving forward, our nation should work closely with our American counterparts to not only strengthen our institutions, but to create mutually beneficial regulations that focus on environmental sustainability that will result in calculated benefits for all stakeholders in this integral endeavor. So through focusing first on our environment and on our citizens, we're basically at a turning point in Canadian history where we now have the ability to create a more prosperous future for all. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope you have a great day. Stay safe, stay sanitized. Cheers.